Hey there YouTube. Today I wanted to show you guys this device here, which is a honey extractor that I've made out of 7/16 plywood material, a 2x4 and two 2x2 pieces of wood, and that's it. Recently I added this electrical aspect, which is actually a old treadmill that I took apart and used the motor to spin the basket. Now this basket holds 4 medium frames, or 2 medium frames and 2 deeps. Before I had the motor attached from the treadmill, I actually used a handheld corded drill that I attached directly to the threaded rod that runs through the basket. And I would sit there holding the button, waiting quite a long time for the frames to extract, then flipping over the frames to extract the other side and sitting for another 10 minutes with my hand on the trigger spinning it. And I wanted something that was more convenient than using the corded drill, and so I attached a treadmill motor, and I'll show you that up close in a little bit. This black thing here is a pulley wheel that came with the treadmill, and that attaches to the bottom underneath where the motor lies. And I disassembled it so I could show you guys in more detail how this honey extractor is put together. In total I spent under $50, and compared to the $300 to $550 that you'd spend on a motorized 4-frame version of a honey extractor, this is an amazing savings, and it does work quite well. The only reason that I say it's not perfect is just because of my own user error, in the fact that this is my first year beekeeping and I'm using fresh comb, which isn't rigid as maybe second year comb would be in terms of trying to extract it. So I did get a little bit of blowout on a couple of frames, but nothing that couldn't be helped. So to show you guys a little closer from this perspective, this is just a piece of 2x4 that I notched out the sides with a bandsaw, and there's a little rabbet, and that allows it to sit in the box made out of plywood. And this is the wooden basket that I made to hold the frames. So you can see in the bottom there's a couple of notches, and those notches line up with the tabs on a frame, and you just slide in a frame and make sure that the frames are about balanced in weight so that your extractor isn't wobbling all over the place as you're spinning it. But anyway, this is a tangential honey extractor, which means that the frames sit at a tangent to the radius, or 90 degrees. And I did that because I read that you're less likely to have blowout, especially if you're running foundationless. And that's because foundationless frames don't have the wire underneath to support the weight of the honey, because as you're spinning it, there's quite a bit of force, which can lead to your honeycomb being blown out and thrown all over the place in the inside of your extractor. So I made this completely out of part of the 2x4. I just cut these square-ish rectangular dowels out of strips I cut on my table saw. And when I had those all cut down, I actually made this frame, the top and bottom. The bottom is 2 more pieces of 2x4 material that's half the thickness. And there's a rabbet in both the bottom and top that the dowels sit in. And those are glued, and the whole thing is coated in a layer of beeswax, so that the only thing that the honey should come in contact with is maybe a little bit of wood, but hopefully it just touches beeswax. This rod here is just a 3/16, I believe it is, and there's T-bolts that have tabs in them that you pound into the wood so that your basket doesn't slip at all as you're spinning. And it's all held together with a couple of bolts. They're actually lock bolts and some large washers to just get a better grip and make sure that this doesn't go anywhere when you're spinning. And the bottom sits on a couple of washers that are in the bottom of the extractor box, and those just slip on each other to get less friction. And I'll show you that up close and later in the video. This extractor design is based off a video that I saw here on YouTube. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but I will provide a link to that video in the description of this video. There weren't any plans that I were working off, so in that sense, this extractor is just based off of what I saw in that video and everything I did to make it work and to get a honey extractor so I could start extracting some of the honey that my bees were producing. And as I said, this works really well and I think it's comparable to any motorized extractor that you could buy, with the added benefit that you know you made it yourself. So I had taken this extractor apart, and so now I'm going to show you guys in more detail some of the aspects of this extractor, and I'm going to reassemble it and turn it on so you can see it work for yourselves. This is what the inside of the extractor looks like. It spins rather freely for not having any bushings or what do you call them? For not having any bushings or bearings for the rod to slip in. It's just sitting in the wood. Ideally, I could put some sort of copper sleeve or brass sleeve just to make it more secure and less wobbly and not have to worry about the rod wearing away any of the wood as this device gets used more. The bottom is sitting on the washers that I showed you before, and the dimensions of this measure, I believe the basket is 12 inches square. It's exactly 12 inches, the outside measurement. And the box itself measures 20 1/4 square. 20, and the box itself measures 20 by 20 inches and roughly 23 inches high, which is about as small as I could make it with having a square box to the extractor. But it does fit quite easily 2 medium and 2 deeps at the same time, and 4 mediums if at a time when you're extracting. So as the extractor spins, the honey hits the sides, runs down, and runs to this base here, which is actually on a small incline. It slopes downwards that way. This here is the treadmill motor. Ideally, I would have liked to have an enclosed motor, but the one I found on the curb was what you see here. And it worked out fine. It didn't have a electrically controlled speed, which is what I really wanted in terms of having the precise RPMs. So I've laid the extractor on its side to give you a better look how in putting this thing back together. All I have to do is put this pulley back onto the 3/16 threaded rod. I'm going to start that by putting this bolt back on. Gotten the pulley back on, and the reason it took me so long is because I haven't shortened the rod that goes to the center of the basket yet, because I'm not sure if this is the final setup that I want. I know that this isn't ideal having a unshielded motor like this, but it's what I had to work with and I just made it work. And these open wires are a little bit dangerous, but I'm sure that eventually I can enclose this and make it a little bit more safe. But I am aware of the dangers, and I do take a little bit of precaution when I am working with it. And yeah, so as you can see, it's running, and I'll give you a closer look here after I tip it back up. Right now it sounds like there might be a little bit of something rubbing on the bottom, but not too badly. As you can see, it runs really smoothly. It's not wobbling all over the place, and it slows down probably by a fourth the speed when it's full of frames that have completely filled comb. The motor slows down quite a bit, and it's about right. It could be just a little bit faster in terms of ideal honey extraction. A brief overlook of how this thing is put together. You can see here in this corner that the 2x2 material that I use for the legs just decoratively has the corners taken off or broken off with a plane, and I cut this L shape for the sides of the 7/16 plywood to stick in, and the two sides on either side have a rabbet just to make things easier in fitting them together and more stable when I was clamping and gluing. And it did make a big difference in how easily this thing came together. Both sides of either side have the rabbet, and this L in the 2x2 material doesn't go all the way to the bottom. The bottom is actually the square stock material that I had, but I took a chisel and chiseled out, keeping in mind that this bottom piece does slope from this corner down, and I had to stop the L shape prematurely on my saw and finished it off with a chisel. That's on both sides. It was not too complicated, but it does make the whole thing stable. And I just took a brad nailer and tacked things together as I was gluing up, and it made everything secure while I waited for the glue to dry. I didn't have to worry about things coming apart or becoming loose. The bottom plate is all one solid piece, and it too sits in a rabbet that's on the bottom of all three sides, either side and the back. So underneath here, there's a rabbet that this plate pushes up into, and that just prevents or helps to prevent any leaks of honey, as well does the wax coating, seals any cracks or small holes that honey might be able to get into. So this piece of wood wraps around slightly. You can see that I did notch away, not very carefully, but it works. So it just kind of wraps around the leg, and I made sure to fill any gaps with glue. And so these pieces are just pieces of wood that are glued down to the top. And there's, in the corners here, there's small pieces of wood just to make sure that the honey flows around a little easier. The basket itself is fairly straightforward. I showed you previously in the video. The basket measures roughly 12 by 19 3/4 roughly. I just kind of played with the dimensions of the whole thing until it seemed like it was right. Because all you have to do is make sure that your frames fit inside. And I wanted it so that the basket wasn't bigger than it needed to be in terms of height, but that the frames sat nicely in. These two plates on the pulley spread apart with the less tension that's on the belt. So I can move this motor over and it would loosen the tension on the belt, and these two plates would come closer together, making the ratio of the two pulleys smaller and getting a higher revolutions per minute as a result. And so I designed it that way because the treadmill I had taken apart didn't have a speed control, electrically controlling how fast the motor goes. It was this mechanical device that you would turn a crank, and it would change the position of the motor, and it would change the speed at which the treadmill would run. So all I have to do is loosen these bolts on either side and slide it inside this groove that I made. All the hardware that mounts the motor is also off of the treadmill. I just took a jigsaw or sawzall and sawed off the metal on both sides. And this was already the motor mount that was on the treadmill, and I just found a way to attach it to the legs of my honey extractor. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section of this video. If you liked what you saw, or if you want to see more, please like and subscribe. Till next time. Oh, and in case you're wondering, this thing over here is my solar wax melter, and that's just a small hive. But you might see a video soon just going over a little bit about this guy. Again, thanks for watching, and I'm out.